Betrayal didn't whisper that day. It stood in front of everyone when my stepson called me nobody at his wedding and the room went quiet like a grave. I didn't react. I didn't blink. I didn't even breathe for a second. I just sat there with my hands folded, eyes steady, because I had already learned in life that the loudest answers are sometimes the ones you never say. He was 26. Tall. Confident. Wearing a suit I had helped pay for. Standing on a stage decorated with white flowers and borrowed smiles. And in front of 200 guests with a microphone in his hand, he laughed and said he was grateful to everyone who mattered. And then he paused, looked straight at me, and said, "Some people are just here." People chuckled. A few shifted in their seats. His friends laughed a little too loud. His mother looked down. And I sat there, the man who raised him when his real father walked away, the man who stayed when others disappeared, being reduced to air. Nobody defended me. Not then. That's the moment most men would explode. That's the moment anger would take over. That's the moment pride would demand a scene. But I didn't give him that gift. I had spent too many years learning patience. I had learned that silence, when used correctly, becomes a weapon. I met his mother when he was 9. She was tired. Working 2 jobs. Carrying a child and a past at the same time. I wasn't looking to play hero. I was just a man who believed in showing up. So I did. School meetings. Late-night fevers. Broken bicycles. College applications. All of it. Quietly. Without applause. I never asked him to call me Dad. I never pushed. I never competed with the ghost of a man who vanished. I stayed in my lane. Paid what I could. Taught what I knew. Protected when it mattered. He used to wait for me at the window when I came home from work. Used to ask me how engines worked. Used to sit beside me when life hurt him and he didn't know why. I watched him grow from a confused boy into a sharp young man. And somewhere along the way, respect was replaced with convenience. By the time he met his future wife, things had changed. He had new friends. New confidence. New opinions. And suddenly, I was old. I was background. I was just the man married to his mother. I noticed it. I just didn't comment. When he announced the engagement, I congratulated him. When he talked about the wedding, I listened. When he mentioned costs, I helped where I could. No receipts. No conditions. No speeches. I believed support didn't need an audience. The invitations went out. My name was missing. His mother's name was there. Mine wasn't. She said it must be a mistake. I said it was fine. I didn't push. The seating plan put me near the back. Not with family. Not with close friends. I smiled and said nothing. Because when you've lived long enough, you recognize patterns. And when you recognize patterns, you start preparing. The night before the wedding, his mother cried. She said he was distant. She said he was acting strange. She said maybe stress was getting to him. I held her hand and told her everything would be okay. And I meant it. Just not in the way she thought. At the ceremony, I watched him walk in with his chest high, his shoulders back, his smile practiced. He didn't look at me. Not once. He hugged his friends. He laughed with his future in-laws. He shook hands with people he barely knew. And I remained invisible. That kind of invisibility hurts only if you let it. The vows were said. Applause followed. Glasses clinked. Music played. And then came the speeches. His best friend went first. Jokes. Stories. Laughter. Then his mother. Tears. Pride. Love. I watched her hands shake. I watched her voice break. I watched her heart on display. And then he took the microphone. That was when he did it. That was when he decided to make a point. That was when he looked at the room, smiled, and said he was grateful to his real family, the people who mattered, the ones who shaped him, and then, that line. Some people are just here. He didn't say my name. He didn't need to. Everyone knew. You could feel the shift. The discomfort. The quiet. The awkward energy moving through the room like cold air. And I sat there. Not angry. Not embarrassed. Just awake. Because in that second, something clear settled inside me. Not hatred. Not revenge. Understanding. I understood who he had chosen to be. I understood how he saw me. And I understood exactly what I needed to do. I didn't leave. I didn't storm out. I didn't create drama. I stayed. I clapped. I even smiled. Men who act from emotion lose control. Men who act from patience gain it. After the speeches, people came to me. A few. Quietly. They said they were sorry. They said it was awkward. They said it wasn't right. I nodded. Thanked them. Changed the subject. His mother avoided my eyes. She knew. She felt it. But she didn't confront him. Not then. He passed me once near the bar. Our eyes met. For a second, something crossed his face. Guilt, maybe. Or fear. Or nothing at all. He walked on. That's when I knew. He thought he had won. He thought I was weak. He thought silence meant surrender. He had no idea that silence was just me thinking. I went home early that night. Not because I was hurt. Because I was focused. I sat in my chair. Lights off. Phone on the table. And I went through every memory, every detail, every interaction. When people underestimate you, they expose themselves. And he had just exposed everything. I didn't sleep much. Not from pain. From clarity. By morning, I had a plan. Not a cruel one. Not a loud one. A quiet one. A patient one. A fair one. Because real revenge doesn't scream. It waits. And I was very good at waiting. I didn't rush into anything. That was always my advantage. When you've lived long enough, you learn that speed is emotional, and emotion makes mistakes. I had no interest in mistakes. I wanted clarity. I wanted balance. I wanted him to understand something without me ever saying a word. The house was quiet that morning. His mother was still asleep. The wedding decorations were stacked in the corner like leftovers from a celebration that wasn't meant for me. I stood there for a moment, looking at them, not with bitterness, but with a strange calm. It was the calm you feel when a truth finally stops hiding. I made coffee, sat down, and opened my laptop. I wasn't searching for revenge. I was reviewing reality. For years, I had handled things quietly. Bills, insurance, school matters, emergency contacts, legal paperwork. Not because I wanted control. Because someone had to be responsible. And now, responsibility had become leverage. People think power is loud. It isn't. Power is paperwork. Power is signatures. Power is access. He didn't know that I was still listed on certain documents. He didn't know that some things were still under my name. He didn't know because he never asked. He just assumed. Assumption is dangerous. I checked accounts. I checked property records. I checked business agreements. Slowly, carefully, and with each click, a pattern appeared. He had stepped into adulthood, but he hadn't stepped into independence. He was still standing on my shoulders without realizing it. The wedding had cost more than he admitted. I knew because I saw the charges. I had covered part of it without being asked. Quietly, like always. He never thanked me. He probably never noticed. His mother woke up. She looked tired, emotional. I poured her coffee, sat with her. She stared at the table for a long time before she spoke. "He embarrassed you," she finally said. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know what to say. Because I wanted to choose my words carefully. "He showed who he is," I said calmly. "That's not always a bad thing." She looked at me, confused, hurt, guilty. "I should have said something," she whispered. I put my hand over hers. Not to comfort her. To steady her. "No," I said. "You shouldn't fight your son. You should watch him." She didn't understand. But she nodded. Later that day, he came home briefly. To pick up gifts. To grab clothes. He walked past me like I was furniture. Not rude. Not kind. Just empty. That emptiness told me more than any insult ever could. He was already rewriting history in his mind. In his story, he had done everything alone. He had struggled alone. He had succeeded alone. And I was just background. I watched him move around the house like a guest. No eye contact. No greeting. No acknowledgement. When he left, I didn't say goodbye. Because goodbyes are for people who plan to be missed. That afternoon, I made a call. A simple one. To someone who owed me a favor. Someone who knew the business side of things. Someone who didn't ask questions. We spoke briefly, calmly, professionally. No emotion. Just facts. Then I made another call. Then another. By evening, things were already shifting. Not dramatically. Not visibly. Quietly. His life was built on small supports he never noticed. I was simply removing my hands. Not to hurt him. To let him feel weight. That night, his mother asked me what I was doing. I told her the truth. I'm stepping back. She frowned. From what? From everything. She didn't argue. She didn't understand. But she trusted me. And that trust was something I never took lightly. Over the next few days, I became invisible on purpose. I stopped reminding. Stopped fixing. Stopped covering. Stopped correcting. I let things be. And things began to fall. Small at first. Missed payments. Confused calls. Delayed approvals. Nothing dramatic. Nothing you could blame. Just friction. He called his mother. Complained. Frustrated. Angry. She listened. She didn't solve. She didn't explain. She looked at me. I shook my head. Let him learn. He came over one afternoon. Agitated. Tense. He asked if I knew why something was delayed. I told him I wasn't sure. Calmly. Honestly. He stared at me like he wanted to say something. Like he wanted to accuse. But he didn't. He just left. And in that moment, I saw it. Confusion. Men who disrespect you only feel strong when they believe you are weak. The moment your absence creates difficulty, they start questioning their assumptions. That's when power shifts. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just continued living. Because this wasn't about revenge. This was about balance. You don't teach someone respect by demanding it. You let life teach them what they ignored. Days passed. Then weeks. His confidence began to crack. Not publicly. Internally. You could see it in his posture. In his tone. In his eyes. He had never struggled alone before. He just didn't realize it. And now, he was alone. Not abandoned. Just unsupported. Exactly the way he had chosen. His wife called his mother one evening. Worried. Stressed. Saying things weren't going as planned. Saying finances were tight. Saying pressure was building. His mother listened. Then looked at me. I nodded. Let it happen. Because sometimes, the most powerful lesson is the one you didn't write. And he was about to start reading it. He didn't realize at first that the ground had shifted. Most people don't. They think the world is stable until the moment it isn't. And by then, it's already too late to ask who moved it. The first sign was small. He showed up one afternoon, irritated, pacing the living room, phone in hand. He didn't greet me. He didn't sit. He just stood there like someone waiting for an answer. They messed up the paperwork, he said, more to the room than to me. I nodded once. That happens. He frowned. It never happened before. I met his eyes. Neutral. Things change. He looked like he wanted to say something else. He didn't. He walked out. That's how it starts. Not with explosions. With confusion. His mother noticed it too. The tension. The short temper. The silence between his words. She asked him if everything was okay. He said yes. Too quickly. Pride is a heavy thing. Men carry it even when it's breaking their backs. A few days later, his car broke down. Nothing dramatic. Just inconvenient. He called his friends. No answer. Called his wife. She was busy. Finally, he called his mother. She looked at me before answering. I didn't stop her. I just didn't move. She went to pick him up. He didn't thank her. He complained. About work. About money. About stress. About people being unreliable. She listened. Then said quietly, "You've been very independent lately." He didn't catch the meaning. Most people don't. When they got home, he walked past me again. No greeting. No eye contact. He went to his old room, grabbed something, and left. I watched the door close. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Just distance. The kind of distance that creates perspective. That week, a small business issue came up. Something he had invested in. Something he thought was handled. It wasn't. Because I wasn't handling it anymore. He called me. Not his mother. Me. The phone rang. I looked at it for a second. Then answered. Hello. There was a pause. A breath. Then, do you know what's going on with the account? I kept my voice steady. Which account? The one for the project. The one you helped set up. I thought for a moment. I'm not involved with that anymore. Another pause. Longer this time. Oh, he said. That one word carried a lot. Surprise. Discomfort. Realization. I thought you were still. He stopped. I stepped back. I said simply. Silence. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He just said he'd figure it out. And hung up. That was the moment I knew. The message had landed. Not fully. Not clearly. But enough to shake him. That night, his mother asked me if I was being too hard. I told her no. I'm being fair, I said. She didn't argue. She knew what he had done. She just didn't know what it meant yet. The next time I saw him, he looked tired. Not physically. Mentally. The kind of tired that comes from carrying things you never carried before. He sat. Not close. But not far. That was new. He stared at the floor. Then said, "Things are complicated." I nodded. They usually are. He waited. For advice. For help. For something. I gave him nothing. Not out of cruelty. Out of respect. Because men grow when they're allowed to struggle. He left shortly after. And I sat there, alone, thinking about the boy who used to wait by the window. Life is strange like that. It gives you everything. Then tests if you noticed. Days turned into weeks. His visits became less confident. More cautious. He asked questions now. Real ones. Not statements. He was learning. Slowly. Uncomfortably. Honestly. And still, I said nothing. Because the best lessons are the ones you arrive at yourself. Not the ones you're forced to swallow. One evening, his wife called his mother crying. Saying things were hard. Saying pressure was everywhere. Saying he was distant. Saying money was tight. His mother listened. Comforted. Hung up. Then sat beside me. "He's struggling," she said. I looked at her. He chose to. She didn't disagree. That's when I knew this wasn't about punishment. It was about alignment. He had declared me nobody. Life was simply agreeing. And teaching him the cost. The room stayed quiet. The house stayed calm. And I stayed patient. Because the turning point wasn't far. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be humbling. Betrayal has a strange echo, and when he started calling me for help after calling me nobody, I knew life had already begun answering him. He didn't say my name when he called. He never does. He just said, "I need to ask you something." That alone told me how far he had fallen. Pride doesn't bend easily. When it does, it makes noise inside. I didn't rush to respond. I let the silence sit for a second. Not to punish him. To let him feel it. "What is it?" I asked. He cleared his throat. "Do you still have the contact for that financial advisor?" I leaned back in my chair. The one he used to ignore. The one he never thanked. The one I had introduced him to years ago. The one who had quietly helped stabilize his first big move. "No," I said calmly. "I don't." Another pause. "Oh," he replied. Again. That word was becoming familiar. "I thought you kept all that stuff," he said. "I used to," I answered. Silence again. Then, "Okay. Thanks." And the call ended. No anger. No disrespect. Just discomfort. That was progress. People think growth looks heroic. It doesn't. It looks awkward. It looks uncertain. It looks like a man realizing he misjudged someone. After that, He began showing up more often. Not confidently. Carefully. Like someone walking on ice that had already cracked once. He would sit. Ask about the weather. About work. About nothing. He avoided eye contact. His voice was softer. Less sharp. He wasn't trying to reconnect. He was trying to survive. I watched him without judgment. Without satisfaction. Without resentment. Because when someone is learning, you don't interrupt. His mother saw it too. She said nothing. She let it unfold. For the first time, she wasn't rescuing him. That was important. He needed to know what it felt like to stand alone. One evening, he came by with his wife. She was polite. Nervous. Trying too hard. She thanked me for something small. I nodded. He stood there, hands in pockets, shifting weight, like a teenager waiting to be scolded. The irony wasn't lost on me. They sat, spoke about work, about stress, about bills, about plans that weren't working. I listened, not as a savior, as a witness. At one point he sighed and said, "It's harder than I thought." I didn't respond. He glanced at me, then away. He wanted me to say something. He wanted reassurance. He wanted guidance. I gave him space. Because real guidance is not given. It's earned. He left that night quieter than he arrived. And that's how I knew. The lesson was sinking in. Not because I told him. Because life showed him. Days later, he came alone. Sat down. Looked tired. Looked older. He stared at the table for a long time before speaking. "I didn't realize how much you handled," he said. That was it. Not an apology. Not gratitude. Just recognition. And recognition is the doorway. I nodded once. A lot of people don't. He looked at me. Studied me. For the first time in a long time, he actually looked. "I didn't mean—" He stopped. Words failed him. Good. Because some things shouldn't be explained. They should be felt. He left shortly after. And the house returned to its quiet rhythm. But something had changed. Not in me. In him. He wasn't strong anymore. He was aware. And awareness is the beginning of humility. His wife called his mother again that week. Less emotional. More practical. Asking questions. Seeking advice. Looking for direction. His mother gave her answers. But she didn't solve anything. She was learning too. We were all learning. But he was the one being shaped. Slowly. Firmly. By consequences. One afternoon, he showed up unexpectedly. No call. No warning. Just there. He stood in the doorway like he didn't know where to place himself. "Can we talk?" he asked. I gestured to the chair. He sat. Took a breath. Then said, "I messed up. I didn't react. I didn't comfort. I didn't comment. I waited." He shifted. Uncomfortable with the silence. Then continued. "I shouldn't have said what I said. At the wedding. There it was. Finally. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just honest." I looked at him. "Come. Steady. Why did you?" I asked. He swallowed. "I don't know. I guess. I wanted to show people I didn't need anyone." I nodded. And I was wrong," he said quietly. "I let that sit. Because some admissions need space." He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He didn't apologize again. He just sat there. Smaller than he used to be. Not weak. Real. That's when I spoke. Not as a father. Not as an authority. As a man. "You never needed to prove anything," I said. "But you chose to." He looked down. "I know," he replied. We sat in silence. And for the first time since the wedding, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was honest. The shift had begun. Not because I attacked him. Because I let him fall. And fall is where people learn. He didn't become respectful overnight. Life doesn't work that way. Growth is slow. Uneven. Sometimes it even looks like failure before it looks like strength. But something in him had shifted, and once that happens, it never goes back. He started calling before coming over. That was new. Small thing. Big meaning. Is it okay if I stop by? He asked one evening. I paused. If you want. He did. He came in, sat, waited. Didn't touch anything. Didn't act like he owned the space anymore. That told me everything. When a man starts asking permission in a place he once controlled, it means reality has corrected him. We talked about ordinary things. Work, weather, traffic. Nothing heavy. Nothing emotional. But underneath, there was tension. The kind that comes from wanting to say something and not knowing how. He finally said, I didn't realize how much you did for me. I nodded. Most people don't. He didn't argue. He didn't defend. He just accepted it. That was important. People who are still arrogant explain. People who are learning listen. He stayed a little longer than usual. Helped his mother with something in the kitchen. Said thank you. Actually said it. Not rushed. Not forced. I watched him. Quietly. The boy was becoming a man. The hard way. A few days later, he called again. Asked a question about insurance. Then about taxes. Then about contracts. Things he had never cared about before. Things he assumed handled themselves. I answered simply. Clearly. Without emotion. Without lecture. He took notes. Literally. That almost made me smile. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about pride. It was about alignment. His wife came over with him one afternoon. She was more relaxed this time. Less defensive. More open. She talked about pressure. About expectations. About trying to be perfect. I listened. Then I said, perfect isn't stable. She looked at me, confused. Stable is better, I added. She nodded. Sometimes one sentence does more than a speech. He watched that exchange carefully. Like he was studying. Like he was trying to understand a world he had ignored. That's how learning looks in adults. Awkward. Quiet. Sincere. Later, when she went to the restroom, he leaned forward and said, I shouldn't have treated you like that. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just clear. I met his eyes. You already did. He winced slightly. Good. Not because I wanted him to hurt. Because hurt means you care. I didn't mean to make you feel small, he said. I held his gaze. You didn't. You revealed yourself. He looked confused. That's worse, I added. He exhaled slowly, like the weight of that landed. I get it, he said quietly. And for the first time, I believed him. Not because of his words. Because of his posture. His shoulders weren't high anymore. His voice wasn't sharp. His eyes weren't challenging. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to understand. That's the difference between boys and men. The next week, a problem came up with his job. Something he didn't know how to handle. He called me. Not his friends. Not his wife. Me. Can I ask your opinion? He said. That sentence alone told me everything. Go ahead, I replied. He explained the situation. Carefully. Honestly. Without exaggeration. Without ego. I listened. Then gave him one piece of advice. Just one. He followed it. It worked. He didn't say thank you. He didn't need to. The look on his face when he came over later said it for him. Respect doesn't announce itself. It shows. He was changing. Not because I forced him. Because I allowed him to face himself. His mother noticed it too. She smiled more. Worry less. She stopped defending him. Stopped excusing him. She was letting him be an adult. That was new for her. And good for him. One night, we all sat together. Quiet. Comfortable. No tension. No performance. He laughed at something small. A real laugh. Not loud. Not forced. And for a moment, I saw the boy again. The one who used to wait at the window. But I didn't reach for that. Because men don't go back. They move forward. He stayed late that night. Helped clean up. Took out the trash. Said goodnight. Actually said it. Not rushed. Not distracted. Sincere. I watched him walk out. And I knew. The lesson was working. Not because I spoke. Because I stayed silent. Because I stepped back. Because I let life handle it. That's the difference between control and wisdom. Control pushes. Wisdom waits. And he was finally meeting wisdom. He didn't apologize again. Not with words. He didn't need to. Apologies, when repeated, become performances. He was past performing. Now he was adjusting. That mattered more. He started asking questions that weren't about fixing problems, but about understanding them. That's a different kind of growth. That's when you know someone isn't just reacting, they're rebuilding. One afternoon, he asked me how I learned to stay calm under pressure. I didn't answer right away. I thought about it. By being pressured, I said. He nodded slowly. Like that made sense. Like he finally understood that strength isn't natural, it's earned. We talked about work. About mistakes. About people who smile while planning. About how silence can protect you better than noise ever will. He listened. Really listened. No interruptions. No counterpoints. Just attention. That was new. He used to talk over me. He used to correct me. He used to assume. Now he waited. Respect doesn't announce itself. It settles. His wife joined us later. She was different too. Less guarded. Less defensive. More human. She admitted she had misjudged me. Not directly, but in the way people confess without saying the words. She said, "I didn't realize how much you did for him." I nodded. That's common. She looked embarrassed. Then grateful. Then quiet. She wasn't a bad person. She was just young. And youth mistakes confidence for independence. That illusion doesn't last. He started helping around the house when he visited. Small things. Dishes. Trash. Repairs. Not because he was told. Because he noticed. That told me everything. People who notice are changing. One evening, he asked if I could show him how to fix something. He had never asked that before. He used to just Google. We stood side by side. Quiet. Focused. Working. He watched my hands. Copied. Tried. Failed. Tried again. And then it worked. He smiled. Not proudly. Gratefully. That smile was different. It wasn't about ego. It was about connection. That's rare in grown men. We didn't talk much that night. We didn't need to. Some things don't need language. They need presence. Later, his mother told me she was proud of him. I told her I wasn't surprised. She looked at me like she wanted to ask something. Then didn't. That's trust. A few days later, he came over late. Unexpected. Alone. He sat down. Took a breath. Then said, "I don't think I know who I am yet." That was honest. I respected that. Most people don't, I replied. He looked at me. "How did you figure it out?" I smiled slightly. Not because it was funny. Because it was simple. "I didn't," I said. "I just stopped pretending." He thought about that. Long. Hard. Then nodded. That was a turning moment. Not big. Not dramatic. Just real. From that day, he stopped pretending. He stopped acting like he had everything handled. He stopped projecting. He started asking. He started listening. He started learning. That's when the real work began. Because humility opens doors. And life was ready to walk him through them. But life is not gentle. It doesn't teach with comfort. It teaches with friction. And that friction was coming. I could feel it. In the way he hesitated before speaking. In the way he measured his words. In the way he checked his tone. He was becoming aware. And awareness is uncomfortable. But it's necessary. One night, as he was leaving, he stopped at the door. Turned back. Looked at me. "I'm glad you're here," he said. Simple sentence. Heavy meaning. I nodded. "I've always been." He held my gaze for a second. Then left. And I sat there. Quiet. Not proud. Not emotional. Just settled. Because sometimes, the victory isn't when someone bows. It's when they see. And he was finally seeing. But the real test hadn't arrived yet. Respect earned in calm is easy. Respect earned under pressure is real. And pressure was coming. Because life always checks if the lesson stuck. Danger doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it smiles at you while sharpening the knife. And I saw that smile on his face the day his past confidence came back too quickly. He had been improving, listening, learning, softening. And then, suddenly, something shifted. His tone grew firmer. His posture straightened. His words sharpened again. Not fully. Not openly. Just enough. That's when I knew. Something had given him a false sense of security. Men who grow properly stay balanced. Men who grow quickly often overcorrect. He came in one afternoon talking fast. About a new opportunity. A new plan. A new connection. He was energized. Confident. Almost cocky. I listened. He spoke about a business idea. A partnership. A fast track. Shortcuts. Promises. Big returns. I didn't interrupt. He finished. Looked at me. Waiting. What do you think? He asked. I chose my words carefully. I think you're excited. He frowned slightly. That's not what I asked. I know, I said. He shifted. A hint of irritation. Not much. Just enough. I think it's risky, I added. He waved it off. Everything is risky. I nodded. Some risks are stupid. He didn't like that. I could see it. His jaw tightened. His eyes narrowed slightly. Not everyone wants to stay safe forever, he said. There it was. The edge. The same edge that had spoken at the wedding. The same edge that thought independence meant superiority. I didn't challenge him. I didn't warn him. I didn't argue. I just said, then make sure you can afford the fall. He didn't respond. He stood up shortly after. Left quickly. No goodbye. His mother watched him go. Then looked at me. Is he okay? She asked. He's confident, I replied. She didn't smile. Neither did I. Because confidence without foundation is dangerous. The next few days, he was distant again. Busy. Unavailable. Short in messages. Quick in calls. Old patterns creeping back. That happens when people feel power. Power tests character. And his was still forming. His wife called his mother one evening, frustrated. Saying he was distracted. Obsessed. Distant. Saying he wasn't listening. Saying he was chasing something. His mother listened. Then told me. I nodded. He's learning another lesson. She sighed. Does it always have to be this hard? For men like him, I said. Yes. Because some people only learn when it costs. He came by late that week. Tense. Irritated. Defensive. He talked about delays. About people being slow. About things not moving fast enough. He blamed systems. Blamed partners. Blamed timing. He didn't blame himself. Not yet. That's stage one. He sat. Leaned forward. Spoke fast. I waited until he paused. Are you listening? He asked. Yes, I said. I'm just not agreeing. He stiffened. Why not? Because you're chasing control, I replied. Not stability. He scoffed lightly. You wouldn't understand. That sentence landed. Not loudly, but deeply. I looked at him. Steady. You're right, I said. I understand consequences. That shut him up. Not because I was harsh. Because I was certain. He didn't argue. He just leaned back. Crossed his arms. Defensive posture. He stayed quiet the rest of the visit. Left early. That night, his mother was uneasy. She said he seemed different. She said something felt off. I agreed. Because when a man regains confidence before earning wisdom, he becomes reckless. And recklessness invites trouble. A few days later, the call came. Not from him. From his wife. Crying. Shaking. Panicked. Something had gone wrong. Badly wrong. I listened. Quiet. Let her speak. She said money was gone. She said an investment collapsed. She said promises were broken. She said he was devastated. She said he didn't know what to do. I didn't react. I thanked her. Hung up. Looked at his mother. She looked scared. He's in trouble, she whispered. I nodded. Yes. Not with fear. With acceptance. Because this was the lesson. This was the price. This was the moment. He came over that night. Not confident. Not proud. Not sharp. Broken. He didn't sit at first. He just stood there. Eyes tired. Face pale. I messed up, he said. No excuses. No edge. No arrogance. Just truth. I gestured to the chair. He sat. Put his face in his hands. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Honest. Finally, he spoke. I thought I had it under control. I nodded. You did. In your head. He didn't argue. He just nodded. That was new. He was no longer defending. He was facing. And that's when growth really starts. But growth is painful. Because it means seeing yourself without filters. And he was about to see a lot. He didn't cry. Men like him rarely do. Instead, he sat there stiff, eyes fixed on the floor, jaw tight like he was holding himself together with willpower alone. That kind of silence is louder than shouting. I didn't rush him. I didn't ask questions. I didn't fill the space. Because when a man is breaking, he needs room to fall. Minutes passed. Maybe more. Time feels different in moments like that. Finally, he spoke. I lost everything, he said. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just flat. I nodded. No. You lost what you rushed into. He looked up at me. Confused. Hurt. Tired. There's a difference, I added. He exhaled slowly. Like that distinction mattered. Like it gave him something solid to hold on to. He told me the story. Slowly. Piece by piece. How someone promised quick returns. How he believed it. How he ignored warning signs. How he didn't ask questions. How he didn't listen. He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. He knew. When he finished, he looked at me like he was waiting for judgment. For anger. For disappointment. I gave him none. You wanted independence, I said calmly. This is what it feels like. He closed his eyes. Not in anger. In recognition. His mother sat quietly, hands clasped, eyes wet. She wanted to jump in. To defend. To soothe. To rescue. I shook my head slightly. She stopped. That was important. He needed to feel this. I don't know what to do, he said. I leaned back. Start by breathing. He did. Slowly. Deeply. Then I said, then start by telling the truth. To everyone. No hiding. No pretending. No spinning. He nodded. Because when you're broken, you don't have energy to lie. After that, I continued, you take responsibility. Quietly. Fully. Without blame. He nodded again. I watched his shoulders drop slightly. Not defeated. Relieved. Because when you stop pretending, you stop fighting yourself. He asked if I could help. Not directly. Not boldly. Just, do you think there's a way out? I looked at him. There's always a way forward, I said. Out is optional. He frowned. What does that mean? It means you may not escape the damage, I replied. But you can escape becoming it. He swallowed. That landed. He stayed that night. On the couch. Quiet. Thinking. I didn't hover. I didn't advise. I let the night do its work. The next morning, he was different. Quieter. Slower. More careful. He apologized to his mother. Properly. Directly. Without excuses. She hugged him. Cried. Forgave him. Then he looked at me. I'm sorry, he said. Not loud. Not dramatic. Real. I nodded. I know. He looked surprised. How? Because you wouldn't be here if you weren't, I said. He absorbed that. He spent the day making calls. Hard ones. Uncomfortable ones. Honest ones. People yelled. People blamed. People cut him off. He took it. Didn't argue. Didn't defend. Just took it. That's humility. And humility is expensive. That evening, he sat beside me. Exhausted. Empty. I didn't think it would feel like this, he said. I replied, that's because you never watched anyone fall before. He looked at me. Have you? I met his eyes. Yes. He waited. I didn't continue. Because some lessons are not stories. They're scars. He didn't push. That told me he was learning respect. Over the next few days, reality hit him in waves. Bills. Calls. Emails. Consequences. He handled them. Not well. But honestly. That was progress. His wife struggled. Cried. Panicked. Blamed him. Then blamed herself. Then blamed the world. He didn't fight her. He listened. That was new. He was becoming smaller. Not weaker. Smaller. And that's where growth fits. He came to me one night and said, I was wrong about you. I looked at him. You were wrong about yourself. He nodded. Because that was the truth. He had built an image. A story. A version of himself that didn't match reality. Reality corrected him. Gently at first. Then firmly. Then completely. He didn't ask for help again. He didn't need to. He was doing the work. And that's when I knew. The conflict was no longer external. It was internal. And internal conflicts change people. Not quickly. Not easily. But permanently. The arrogance was gone. The edge was gone. The noise was gone. What remained was a man. Unfinished. But honest. And honesty is the foundation of strength. He stopped talking about plans. That was the first sign the arrogance had truly died. Men who are confident talk about the future. Men who are humbled focus on the present. He began arriving earlier. Leaving later. Sitting longer. Listening more. Silence had become his teacher. He watched me now. The way I moved. The way I handled small problems. The way I spoke to people. The way I never raised my voice. He was studying. That told me everything. One evening, while his mother was in the kitchen, he leaned toward me and said, How do you stay so steady? I didn't answer immediately. Because I already fell, I said. He froze. Then slowly nodded. That connection mattered. Because once a man realizes you understand his pain, he stops competing with you. He started doing things without being asked. Fixing small things. Cleaning. Offering help. Not to impress. To contribute. That's growth. His wife struggled more. She was emotional. Reactive. Afraid. She had never known instability. She had married into an illusion of control. Illusions shatter loudly. He absorbed her fear without pushing back. He apologized when she lashed out. He stayed calm when she panicked. That was new. That was strength. One night, after she left, he sat with his hands folded, staring at nothing. I don't recognize myself, he said. I replied, Good. He looked up, confused. Why? He asked. Because the man you recognized failed you, I said. This one might not. He thought about that. Long. Hard. Then nodded. That was the moment the boy truly left. Not the wedding. Not the loss. This acceptance. The following week, he faced legal pressure. Nothing criminal. But serious. Official. Intimidating. He didn't hide it. He brought the papers. Set them on the table. Looked at me. I don't know what these mean, he said. I picked them up. Read. Slowly. Carefully. Then explained. Calmly. Clearly. Without judgment. He listened. Took notes. Asked questions. Not defensive. Not proud. Open. That was new. We went through options. Consequences. Steps. I didn't decide for him. I showed him. He chose. And he chose wisely. That mattered. Because wisdom chosen is stronger than wisdom given. He started standing straighter. Not arrogantly. Firmly. Calmly. His voice was quieter. But steadier. His eyes no longer searched for approval. They searched for clarity. That's growth. One afternoon, he surprised me. I was wrong to treat you the way I did, he said. Not emotional. Not dramatic. Clear. I know, I replied. He smiled slightly. I also know why. I raised an eyebrow. Because I was afraid of being small, he said. I nodded. And now? He exhaled. Now I'm afraid of being wrong. I smiled. Not outwardly. Internally. Because that's the correct fear. His mother noticed the change too. She said he seemed grounded, different, real. She was right. But real men are tested again. Always. Because life checks twice. And the second test was coming. A former partner reached out. The same one who led him into the loss. Offering another opportunity. Another fix. Another shortcut. He showed me the message. Didn't hide it. Didn't flirt with it. Just showed me. What do you think? He asked. I looked at him. I think you already know. He nodded. Deleted it. That moment told me everything. The lesson had landed. Not because he failed. Because he learned. And that's rare. People often repeat mistakes. He chose not to. That's character. One night, he stayed late. We sat in silence. Comfortable. Easy. He finally said, I didn't know respect felt like this. I looked at him. Feels like what? Quiet, he replied. I nodded. Because respect is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It settles. And it stays. He stood up to leave. Stopped. Turned back. Thank you, he said. Not for help. Not for advice. For presence. I nodded. You're welcome. And he left. Not heavy. Not broken. Not arrogant. Balanced. And balance is strength. The conflict was easing. The storm had passed. But the story wasn't over. Because the real turning point isn't when someone falls. It's when they rise differently. And he was rising. Quietly. Strongly. Correctly. Injustice has a way of circling back, and the day his wife's family tried to push me out of his life again, I knew the real test had finally arrived. He told me about it without anger. That alone was new. He said her parents were uncomfortable with me. Said they didn't understand my place. Said they hinted that I wasn't real family. I listened. Quiet. Till. He watched my face carefully, like he was waiting for reaction. For offense. For fire. I gave him none. What did you say? I asked. He hesitated. Nothing. I nodded. Good. He looked confused. Good. Yes, I said. Let people reveal themselves. He didn't understand yet, but he would. He said they wanted him to rely on them more, that they offered help, support, guidance, that they spoke about fresh starts and clean lines. I smiled slightly. Fresh starts are often code for erasing inconvenient people. I asked him, and how did that make you feel? He paused, then said, uncomfortable. That mattered, because comfort is what keeps people blind. Discomfort is what wakes them. He didn't defend them. He didn't justify. He didn't minimize. He was noticing. That's growth. A few days later, his wife came over alone. That was rare. She looked tense, controlled, polite. She sat, smiled, then spoke. She said her parents were concerned. Said they thought I had too much influence. Said they didn't want old dynamics affecting their marriage. I listened. Steady. Not offended. Not defensive. When she finished, I said, they're allowed to think that. She blinked. You're not upset? No, I replied. I'm clear. She looked confused. About what? About who decides, I said. She didn't respond. She left shortly after. That night, his mother was uneasy. She asked if I was okay. I told her yes. She asked if I was worried. I told her no. She asked why. I said, because pressure reveals loyalty. She didn't fully understand, but she trusted me. A few days later, he came over. Tense. Quiet. Focused. They want me to move closer to them, he said. I nodded. That makes sense. He frowned. How? People like control, I replied. Distance limits it. He sat back. Thought. They also said you don't really need to be involved anymore, he added. I met his eyes. And what did you say? He hesitated. Then, I didn't agree. That was the moment. Not loud. Not dramatic. Powerful. Because he didn't rush to please. He chose. That didn't go over well, he said. I smiled slightly. Truth rarely does. He leaned forward. They said you're holding me back. I shook my head. No. I'm holding you steady. He laughed softly. Not because it was funny. Because it was accurate. I don't know why they see you as a threat, he said. I answered honestly. Because I'm not replaceable. He nodded. Because he knew it now. They were trying to rewrite the structure of his life. To rearrange loyalties. To redefine influence. That's not support. That's control. And he was seeing it. One evening, his wife confronted him. Told him her parents were unhappy. Told him they felt disrespected. Told him he was choosing sides. He told me this without drama. She said I'm changing, he said. I replied, you are. He smiled slightly. Good. That told me everything. The boy who once craved approval was becoming a man who valued alignment. That's rare. And dangerous. Because when you stop being controlled, controllers push harder. Her parents invited him over. Alone. Without her. That's strategic. He went. He came back quiet. Not shaken. Aware. They talked a lot, he said. About family. About loyalty. About how they've always been there. I nodded. And they didn't mention you once, he said. I smiled. Of course they didn't. He frowned. Why? Because ignoring someone is easier than confronting their presence, I replied. He thought about that. Long. Then nodded. He said they offered financial help. Promised stability. Promised support. I asked, what did it cost? He looked at me. You. I nodded. And that was the moment he understood. Not just them. Everything. The wedding. The comment. The distance. The disrespect. The pattern. He sat there, eyes focused, jaw set. They did the same thing, he said quietly. I looked at him. Who? Before, he said. At the wedding. They laughed. They encouraged it. They didn't defend you. I didn't respond. He didn't need me to. He was connecting dots. And when men connect dots, they don't forget. I didn't see it, he said. I didn't want to. I replied, most people don't. Until it costs them. He leaned back. Exhaled. They think you're weak, he said. I smiled slightly. Let them. He shook his head. They're wrong. I nodded. Yes. And that was the turning point. Not when he defended me. When he believed in me. Because belief changes behavior. He didn't announce anything. He didn't confront anyone. He didn't create drama. He just adjusted. He stopped sharing everything. He stopped seeking their advice. He stopped prioritizing their comfort. Quietly. Firmly. He chose his alignment. And alignment is power. He came over more often. Talked more. Shared more. Not because he needed help. Because he valued presence. That's different. One night, he said something I didn't expect. I don't want to be like them, he said. I looked at him. Then don't be. He nodded. I won't. And I believed him. Because men who see truth don't unsee it. And the truth was now clear. The wedding wasn't just disrespect. It was influence. And he had reclaimed it. Quietly. Without noise. Without war. Just choice. And choice is the strongest weapon a man has. He didn't act immediately. That's the key. Patience always strengthens the hand that waits. He thought. He weighed. He let the tension settle. The more they pushed, the more he realized he had to move carefully. The first sign of his quiet strategy was subtle. He began documenting everything. Conversations. Messages. Promises. Threats disguised as advice. He didn't mention it. He didn't show it. He just did it. I watched from a distance. Not because I was curious. Because I wanted him to feel the weight of his own responsibility. That's where true power begins. In clarity, not reaction. She noticed too. His wife. She asked him why he was keeping records. He told her plainly, "So I know the facts. So I don't guess." That simple answer carried wisdom. It unsettled her. She didn't fully understand it, but she sensed it. Her parents sensed it too, without knowing why. They began to call less frequently. They began to offer suggestions instead of instructions. They didn't know he had already calculated every step. One evening, he came over late. Tired, but calm. I asked what was on his mind. "They called again today," he said. "Tried to pressure me into something." "And?" I asked. "I didn't respond," he said. I nodded. "Good." He paused, then added, "I let them speak. I let them think they were leading." That's when I knew the plan had begun. Not obvious, not loud, but effective. Because power taken subtly is the kind that lasts. He began setting boundaries without announcing them. Invitations politely declined. Suggestions carefully considered before responding. Calls returned after he had weighed the impact. Nothing dramatic. Everything deliberate. Her parents didn't realize it at first. They assumed he was compliant. They assumed he was still under influence. They assumed he didn't see their patterns. But he did. Quietly. Methodically. Then came the small reversals. Not confrontations. Not arguments. Just reality. He started making decisions in their absence. Small ones. Choosing his own contractors. Choosing his own timelines. Choosing how he spent his time. Nothing revolutionary, but enough to unsettle them. One day, he said to me, "They think I'm naive. They think I'll bow. They think I don't notice." I replied, "And what do you think?" "I think they're wrong," he said. Completely. That's the moment power truly shifts. When you see the game clearly and play it silently, without announcement. His wife was cautious at first. Afraid he would overstep. Afraid he would create conflict. Afraid he would make mistakes. But he reassured her with calm, not words. Actions, not arguments. They went to dinner with her parents. He listened. Smiled politely. Answered questions. Offered opinions carefully. He never overcommit. Never overexplained. Never yielded unnecessarily. They felt like they were winning. Little did they know. He had already won. Because he was no longer the boy who needed approval. He was the man who understood leverage. Timing. Observation. Patience. A week later, he acted subtly. A small correction to a misstatement they had made about him. Nothing public. Nothing dramatic. Just factually clear. They noticed. Slightly. Uncomfortably. But couldn't argue. Couldn't accuse. Didn't understand how they'd been quietly checked. He smiled lightly when he told me afterward. "They think they're in control." I nodded. "They're not." He laughed softly. Not mockingly. Just satisfaction. The kind that comes from watching a plan unfold without interference. The next step was even quieter. He began redirecting resources, time, energy, money, toward priorities he set himself. Projects he valued. People he trusted. All without a word to them. Her parents called, worried about what they perceived as deviation. He calmly reassured them. Politely. Clearly. Without giving real information. It frustrated them. Confused them. But it didn't anger him. He wasn't reactive. He was deliberate. At one point, he said, "It's almost amusing. They try to manipulate, but I already anticipated each step." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Observation is the greatest teacher. Strategy is the greatest tool. Patience is the greatest weapon. And he was using all three now. Over the next few weeks, their influence waned. Not because of confrontation. Not because of arguments. But because he never gave them power. He allowed them to think they had it, while quietly taking the lead in every matter that affected him. Finally, he looked at me one evening and said, "I never thought quiet could be so strong." I nodded. Silence is stronger than words, if you know how to use it. That's when the true reversal began. Not loud. Not dramatic. Not publicly satisfying. But real. Effective. Permanent. He had turned the tables without breaking them. Without insult. Without revenge. Just alignment, clarity, and patience. And that's the lesson of this phase. Power taken subtly, respected consistently, and executed wisely is invisible until it's undeniable. The moment came quietly. No shouting. No confrontation. Just an invitation. A family gathering. Her parents assumed they were in control of the agenda. He smiled politely and said nothing, letting them set the tone. They spoke. Planned. Suggested. Directed. All the things they had always done. And he listened. Nodded. Smiled. Appeared compliant. But he wasn't. Because he had already rewritten the map. Every conversation, every expectation, every tiny influence had been quietly documented, analyzed, and scheduled for subtle correction. At dinner, they tried again. Subtle comments. Hidden critiques. Innocent questions that weren't innocent. They assumed he'd react the old way, defensive, over-explaining, embarrassed. He didn't. Not once. Instead, he redirected. Calmly. Carefully. Never blunt. Never rude. Just steady. Clear. Firm. Polite. His words didn't attack. They corrected. They guided. They demonstrated competence without announcing it. They noticed. Slightly. Uneasily. But too late. Afterwards, his wife whispered to me, almost in awe, "He's different." I nodded. He is. Quietly, he's claimed authority without resistance. Her parents noticed too. Subtle shifts. Their influence shrinking without being challenged. They assumed it was coincidence, luck, or timing. They didn't see the strategy. Meanwhile, he had started helping them see reality. Small truths at a time. Facts instead of opinions. Steps instead of directives. Guidance instead of orders. They accepted them, not realizing the reversal had already happened. And the wedding incident? Forgotten in tone, but remembered in impact. He hadn't confronted them. He hadn't defended me. He had allowed their actions to reveal themselves while he quietly adjusted his position. At one point, he turned to me privately and said, "They'll never see it coming." I smiled slightly. They don't need to. And that's the point. Over the following weeks, the subtle power shifts became permanent. Decisions he made quietly were respected. Suggestions he offered were followed. Presence he maintained was acknowledged. Influence he exerted was invisible but undeniable. All without drama. All without revenge. Because revenge is loud. It demands attention. This was stronger. Her parents attempted to assert control again, but he politely redirected. Not confrontation. Not compliance. Just clear guidance aligned with reality. They didn't fight. They couldn't. They were already behind, without knowing it. He confided to me later, quietly, "I feel free." I nodded. That's the reward for patience. You don't need to fight, he added. You just need to wait. Observe. Act deliberately. Exactly. He had turned disrespect into awareness. Mockery into recognition. Disregard into respect. And he didn't raise his voice. He didn't demand. He simply moved deliberately, and life adjusted around him. The wedding insult, the ignored presence, the whispers, they all became tools. Lessons. Reminders. Fuel for intelligent, calm action. And in that calm, deliberate space, the moral reversal unfolded naturally. Not in a spectacle. Not in drama. But in lasting effect. Her parents realized later that their influence had waned. They didn't blame him. They didn't confront him. They simply adapted. Because resistance was unnecessary. The shift was already done. He had won quietly. Completely. Without noise. Without anger. Without hurtful words. And in the silence that followed, I saw him fully claim his place. Not as a boy seeking approval, not as a man trying to impress, but as someone who had learned how to stand firmly, observe carefully, and act deliberately. That night, he stayed late, reflecting. I didn't interrupt. I didn't advise. He was internalizing the lesson himself. "You've changed everything," his wife said softly. "No," he replied calmly. "I've only seen it clearly. That's the difference. Seeing clearly changes outcomes. Acting deliberately transforms reality. And patience ensures it endures. By the time they left, the subtle reversal was complete. Her parents' expectations had been quietly adjusted. Their influence diminished. Their assumptions corrected. All without confrontation. And I knew then that the moral justice of the situation had arrived. Not in revenge, not in spectacle, but in intelligence, observation, and calm action. The calm, patient reversal had worked perfectly. Betrayal leaves a mark, even when it's quiet, and by the time he came to me that evening, I could see the aftermath of choices he hadn't even realized were shaping his life. The subtle shift had worked. Her parents' influence had lessened. The wedding insult no longer stung. But life doesn't stop after one lesson. It keeps testing, keeps pushing, keeps asking if the change is real. He was ready. That was the difference. He began making decisions based on his priorities, not theirs. Investments, work, family matters, all carefully considered, all deliberate, all steady. Her parents noticed it. Not at first. But slowly. Questions became suggestions. Suggestions became advice. Advice became optional. And each time, he held his ground. Calmly. Politely. Clearly. Without aggression. Without arrogance. Without need for approval. He told me one night, "It's like they think I'm obedient again, but I'm not." I nodded. "Because you've learned to be steady. You don't need to fight to be respected." He smiled slightly. "It feels different. Good different." That's when the resolution really started. Not a dramatic showdown. Not revenge. Just life aligning naturally with the truth. Problems that once seemed daunting became manageable. Not because he suddenly knew everything, but because he acted deliberately, observed clearly, and measured carefully. His wife noticed it immediately. Less stress. Less chaos. Less anxiety. She stopped micromanaging. Stopped fretting. Allowed him to act. Trusted his judgment. And that trust was everything. Her parents tried one more time. A casual dinner, an invitation framed as concern. They expected influence. They expected control. They expected him to comply. He listened. Smiled. Answered clearly. Made decisions calmly. Polite refusal when needed. Gentle redirection when necessary. And they realized too late. They weren't leading. He was. The beauty of quiet power is in its invisibility. By the time people notice, it's already complete. One evening, after handling a tense family situation, he turned to me. I didn't think I could handle them without confrontation. I shook my head slightly. You don't need confrontation to win. You need clarity, patience, and alignment. He absorbed that. Slowly, fully. I can see it now, he said. The wedding. My mistakes. My assumptions. Even the disrespect. They all taught me how to handle life. Exactly. He began handling small business matters with the same approach. Deliberate, measured, unshaken. Mistakes still happened. But he faced them, corrected them, learned from them. Her parents reached out to him one day, subtly testing boundaries again. He responded with calm, polite guidance. He didn't argue. He didn't justify. He didn't give control. And they adjusted. Quietly, respectfully, without realizing how much had changed. That's the moral resolution. Not punishment. Not confrontation. Recognition of reality. Observation met with intelligence. Power exercised with discretion. He told me later, quietly, I don't feel afraid anymore. I nodded. Fear is the wrong teacher. Clarity is the right one. He smiled. Slightly. Thoughtfully. Calmly. The next test came quietly. No warning. No overt confrontation. Just life nudging him, forcing him to apply what he had learned. A business partner made a sudden demand. Not aggressive, not overtly threatening, just an expectation based on old habits. He was used to reacting. Used to tension. Used to fear. Not anymore. He paused. Listened. Calculated. Responded calmly. Politely. Firmly. And the partner adjusted. Not because of pressure. Not because of argument. but because clarity and patience are impossible to resist when wielded correctly. Her parents noticed it too. They reached out, trying subtle manipulation again, offering help with investments. He listened, nodded, and calmly declined, redirecting attention to his own decisions. No drama. No argument. No tension. That night, he came to me. It feels strange. They're still trying, but it doesn't work anymore. I nodded. It's because you're steady now. That steadiness is stronger than their noise. He understood. Slowly. Fully. Even in small matters at home, he applied the same principle. Decisions about household repairs, family schedules, finances, all approached calmly, deliberately, without letting ego or fear interfere. His wife noticed it immediately. She relaxed. She stopped worrying. She stopped second-guessing. She allowed him space. Allowed him authority. And that trust made everything easier. He told me one evening, quietly, I used to think being right meant arguing. Now I know being right means acting wisely. Exactly. Life, naturally, began to adjust. Opportunities presented themselves differently. People listened. Partners respected deadlines. Friends sought advice. Not because he demanded respect, but because he had earned it quietly, intelligently, patiently. Even her parents eventually came around. They didn't apologize, not directly. They didn't need to. Their influence had diminished naturally. Their assumptions corrected. And they realized, slowly, that control no longer belonged to them. The real beauty of this resolution was that no one lost dignity. No one suffered humiliation. No one was shamed. Justice happened quietly, morally, naturally. He faced challenges from colleagues, from friends, from minor crises. And every time, he handled them with the same calm, deliberate approach. Mistakes still occurred, but he faced them directly, corrected them, and moved forward. One night, he said to me, almost in awe, I feel in charge of myself, of my life. Not controlling others, but steady. I nodded. That's the difference. True authority comes from self-mastery, not domination. Her parents remarked indirectly about his maturity. Subtle compliments. Casual acknowledgement. They weren't loud. They weren't public. But they admitted it in their own way. Recognition without confrontation. That's moral resolution. He started mentoring others quietly. Offering guidance without dominance. Sharing wisdom without ego. Correcting mistakes without harshness. And everyone adjusted around him, naturally. Even the wedding insult, once sharp and painful, became irrelevant. It had served its purpose, to teach patience, observation, and calm authority. He approached family conflicts differently. Not with anger. Not with argument. Not with proof. Just with clarity, honesty, and measured action. The ripple effect was profound. Calm authority changed interactions faster than confrontation ever could. He told me one evening, I don't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. I just act clearly, and people follow. Exactly. And that's the essence of moral resolution. The universe balances itself when wisdom is applied calmly, deliberately, and consistently. Mistakes are corrected. Influence is recalibrated. Respect is restored. And justice doesn't scream, it settles. That night, as he left, he turned and said quietly, I finally understand why you never raised your voice. Because chaos teaches nothing, I said. Observation, patience, and action do. He smiled, nodded, and walked away. Steady, clear, unshaken. And that steadiness carried him through every challenge thereafter, proving that true moral resolution is about alignment with truth, not revenge. The final moments of this resolution were quiet. Not dramatic. Not confrontational. Just life settling into the balance he had worked for. Her parents, once assertive and subtly manipulative, began to treat him with respect. Not because of fear, not because of argument, but because they saw clarity and steadiness in action. Influence shifted without a fight. Even minor conflicts resolved themselves naturally. Misunderstandings at work, minor slights from acquaintances, tense conversations, they all were handled calmly, deliberately, and with thoughtfulness. People adjusted. Life adjusted. Without spectacle. He started speaking differently too. Words measured. Tone steady. Opinions expressed clearly but without ego. And in every interaction, he left space for others without sacrificing truth. His wife noticed it immediately. She stopped worrying. She stopped over-explaining. She stopped asking for validation constantly. She trusted him now fully, because trust comes from consistent action, not promises. He told me one evening, quietly, "I don't feel the weight of others anymore. I don't have to fight for respect." "Because you earned it," I said. Silently, wisely, patiently. The wedding insult, once a sharp memory, had lost its power. It had served its purpose, teaching him observation, patience, and strategic calm. He had learned the value of presence over reaction, and he carried it forward. Even the small ripples in family dynamics corrected themselves naturally. Conversations that used to cause tension now passed smoothly. Her parents stopped testing boundaries. They had realized he would not respond as they expected. The quiet shift was profound. Not loud. Not obvious. But irreversible. They could see it, even if they couldn't explain it. He began mentoring others subtly. Friends, colleagues, younger acquaintances, he guided without dominating. Corrected without belittling. Taught without preaching. And people responded. Naturally. Respectfully. One night, as we sat together after a long day, he said softly, "I think I understand why you always stayed calm. You let life reveal itself while keeping steady." "Exactly," I replied. "Life shows truth when you are patient and deliberate. Chaos hides it. Noise distracts from it. Calm reveals it." He nodded, quietly absorbing the lesson, not just in words, but in understanding how to live it. In those moments, I realized the full circle of this story. The wedding insult, the disrespect, the subtle manipulations, they had all been tools for learning, for growth, for moral realignment. He hadn't sought revenge. He hadn't confronted aggressively. He hadn't acted out of anger. He had used intelligence, patience, and calm observation. And the result was stronger than any loud confrontation could have produced. Respect gained, authority established, relationships corrected, life aligned. That's the essence of true resolution. Justice through wisdom, not spectacle. Authority through presence, not argument. And influence earned through deliberate action, not intimidation. As he left that night, I watched him walk steadily. Confident. Balanced. Fully aware of his place in his life, his family, and the world around him. And in that quiet moment, I knew the lesson had landed, not just for him, but for everyone involved. Life, when handled with clarity and patience, corrects itself. People reveal themselves. Mistakes become lessons. Disrespect transforms into recognition. And moral justice unfolds naturally. I smiled softly to myself. Because sometimes, silence is the most powerful form of revenge. And he had learned that.